Hello, Hibiscus. How's it going? Are you doing okay? So, I thought as we close out 2024, a Saturn ruled year, an energy which I'm sure you have all experienced in many blue cheese funky ways in different departments of your life. But I wanted to close it out by teaching you about the 3 C's. So, as you already know, we have talked about composure, right? Composure is resilience and it's going to carry you incredibly far, especially for the next several historical years that lay ahead for us. And now, today, I wanted to talk to you about community. Hear me out, right? Astrologically, we have the most significant transits playing out currently. So number one, obviously, we are in the downfall of colonialism. Now, it is not in this case that in 1 year you are going to resolve and address hundreds of years of oppression. Some may even argue thousands, right? What will happen is the following. We are going to have back-to-back catalyst moments that are triggered by the wonderful people such as yourselves finally saying in their different industries, in their different walks of life, enough is enough. And soon as these catalyst moments happen, they completely throw a spanner in the oppressor's cognitive machine. Think of it like this. Colonialism is a financial venture, right? It is about exploitation to bang buck. But what happens when it can no longer function in a smooth way? What happens if altogether the blueprint is no longer that abundant? What does that make room for? So some food for thought. Also, astrologically, we are now in a moment where we are going through the final leg of the process of death and rebirth. Now, if you follow me on TikTok, this is something you will hear me speak a lot about in terms of, look, the decisions you make in 2024 until around, I would say roughly the midpoint of 2025, they lay some of the heaviest influencing consequences for what you will experience in the next 20 years ahead. So if you know that, make decisions that not only future you will thank you for, but you can look back on and you feel a sense of integrity, you feel a sense of self-respect. And even if it was difficult, you're very thankful that you could deal with the uncomfortable in that moment instead of letting it escalate and then karmas are karmas. Whatever you build, you have to face. Just the name of the game, right? And then we have this kind of what I can only describe as a biblical humiliation that is said to play out in 2025, right? So we reach an accumulation point. You've had over 5 years where, again, Vedic Astrology is a religious practice. So for us, it's God making his will clear. It's the universe in all its glorious, mysterious, perhaps even messy ways, showing you, listen, this is a direct consequence of the life, the ideologies, everything you've been hubbing. This is what it brought you. So for some people, that can feel really affirming, obviously. And for many of us, it's a stark wake-up call. And you've had over 5 years to reform, rejig, cleanse, basically get your ducks in a row. That time is coming to an end. So as we kick off the new karmic cycle, which will begin next year, there's this stark moment in time that lasts for a few months, pretty much from the spring of summer of 2025, where some people, if they have been, I would say, it's not really about successfully, but I would say very intentionally or their best, figuring out what needs to be rejigged and literally just putting 2 feet in front of another and just going and going and going, you will get so much validation, I think reassurance that this is now your path. Go ahead. Or like, here's a green light, go, 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 go. So therefore, all the uncomfortable decisions, all the uncomfortable conversations, perhaps chapters of loneliness and I would say probably the more like sadder stuff to deal with, you're like, aha, this made sense. Thank God I backed myself. Thank God I had, I think, enough self-awareness and self-validation to do something different compared to my peers around me, and it paid off. And then for others comes what, like I said, a biblical humiliation. So again, we believe in free will. So for some people, if they can't make certain decisions and they refuse to kind of grow past a certain mindset, and they feel the need to stay attached to stuff that, again, generally is not healthy for them. Next year brings what I can only describe as the rudest, nastiest, and messiest of awakenings. Because this is the thing, you want so badly to uphold these illusions or perhaps unhealthy ways of being and existing and engaging with others, no problem. But since you want to do that, let me match your stubbornness and show you what that is. So we have this kind of foresight that we think a lot of people who are victims of illusions will really become victims of illusions. And then there's like a lot of different humiliating experiences for people regarding, I would say, just ideologies, behavior patterns, approaches to life that are just honestly rooted in the wrong stuff. And then there just kind of has to be a ta-da, this is what you get. But it's a kind of sour ta-da, because that ta-da feeling is going to stay with you for a very long time, and there will be heavy, heavy consequences. Hence, I spent the last 5 years in all my colourful ways screaming at you, please change, please reform, please look elsewhere, because the way you're going is not it. Hence, I could say with my chest, you're going to see the re-establishment of fascism, you're going to see issues with censorship, you're going to learn about really harrowing cases of intimate harm and so forth. Baby girl tries to use her words wisely, right? But in this midst of chaos, for me, in this next chapter where the winners will start seeing glimmers at the path ahead is prosperous, and the losers, well, they're about to be sore losers and quite humiliated. I think a big caveat of who feels like a winner and a loser in the next chapter has a lot to do with community. So, as I said, 2024 was a Saturn-ruled year. In our religious scriptures, there's this wonderful story of Saturn actually being imprisoned by this horrific demon, right? Almost like a demon king, if you will, right? And this demon king, in order to make sure his reign of terror and his power goes basically uninterrupted, he then takes all the grahas, so you guys don't know them as the planets, and he essentially imprisons these deities, and he guns for Shani, aka Saturn, the hardest. Because Shani to us, you can go and follow my Patreon, I teach more about Vedic astrology there, but Saturn is truly so misunderstood in the West. That's why I think a lot of people struggle with astrology, and they suffer with it. Basically, you've got to look at it like this: Saturn is one of two that can give you the most wealth, right? But you have to look at Saturn as a karma reinforcer, right? It's not a punisher. It's definitely not a cheerleader. But what it will do is, as you navigate the waves of karma, it will teach you how to swim. But again, because we believe in free will, some people, even if the pool is a little bit deeper than they were like, even if they have never swum before, they can rise to the occasion. And over time, we have an Olympic athlete. Other people, they may need a floaty, and then they might need to gradually come off the floaty and do well. And then other people, that's why we have lifeguards, aka the cycle of reincarnation. You don't get it right this time? No problem, big boy. We go again. But does that make sense? Saturn is always training you to learn how to swim against the tides of karma and eventually not be so overwhelmed by those waves. Everything that's happened this year is training you for the 7 years ahead. So you have to have some grit about you. And I think you have to be reflective enough to understand where your energy was being tested, what rewards actually come from those same challenges and frustrations that could really build you or give you a certain wisdom that you could help others for. Because remember, the name of the game is community. But right, back to the story of the religion, right? So essentially, Saturn is imprisoned, and it's so this demon king can avoid his karma. And the issue is, not only has this demon king locked away Saturn to the point it's very difficult to find where he is, he then has essentially tied Saturn down so Saturn can't look anywhere. So we have something known as Shani's gaze. You can liken it to Medusa's gaze, right? When Saturn looks at you, it's not that terrible things happen, but when Saturn's gaze is on you, every karma is addressed, which can be overwhelming for people because then the good and bad come out at once, but they're going to come out like zhush, right? That is not easy for a spiritual person, let alone the average day person who's just trying to get by, right? And be in bed by 10 p.m. with a Netflix on. So therefore, people are also scared to help Saturn. But guess who's not? Hanuman. Hanuman is who? Mars. What's next year ruled by? Mars. Saturn and Mars are not enemies. They work very well together. But what they require is discipline, consistency, and I think faith and purpose hugely, right? So again, never let astrologers scare you about planetary combinations. Anything can be horrific together. I always talk about, you all idolize Venus. Venus is one of the most toughest planets that will embarrass you, that will lead you astray. It's not about praising Venus, it's about controlling Venus, you know? Beginning back to it. So Hanuman comes along, aka Mars. And Saturn even says, just don't do anything. Like, you can't save me. Spend your energy taking down like the demon king. If I look at you, you're fucked. You are absolutely fucked. And Hanuman is like, it's okay. I am pretty sure I'm pure of heart. I am strong. I am disciplined. I am built. I am filled with a particular energy that no matter what challenges come my way, I've got enough grit in me to handle them and overcome them, right? And again, Saturn's merciful, so Saturn's like warning him away from saving him. Can you imagine? And then when Hanuman goes, no, trust me, like, I've got you. And then Hanuman makes the following point. Yes, I could go out by myself to defeat this demon king. I am praised by the universe for my strength. You know, I am by Rama's side. When you are in trouble, I'm the first person you can call. I can handle business. But strength alone is not enough, because even if I defeat him, somehow, some way, there's something else that will play out. And until his karmas have been addressed, there can never really be peace in the universe, because another him will come along, or there will be some sort of schism of unaddressed karmas that will play out in another way. We need to do this properly. So when I liberate you and get you justice, it sets this ripple effect where I know then when I go forward and I go to take down the demon king, it's a bit more final. It's properly handled. There is a lesson in there for you hibiscuses. We don't believe in spoon feeding people spirituality, but we will tell you stories. And we just hope a lot when we tell you our stories and we share our knowledge with you, something resonates. But that's a huge thing. In the coming years, it's community that will make the winners and losers. And when you think of that story of Hanuman and Saturn, aka Saturn and Mars, both in their individual ways were suffering, right? Both understood something is wrong here and it needs to be fixed. And I'm very sure alone, eventually they would have figured it out. But they got further and the justice was even more poetic and sweeter because they went together. That's often when people have what we feel are like Saturn hardships. We always say, do Hanuman Jalisa, right? Work with Hanuman because Saturn respects Hanuman, aka Mars. And when you merge those energies together, you will eventually have relief and it will be permanent relief. But it requires a lot of work. I've said this a lot on TikTok. The things that are coming up globally for all of us, the challenges will not get any easier. But you, through this time, will get braver, wiser, stronger. You're upgrading. The challenges will always remain the same. And it's in you evolving, you becoming more self-assured, you becoming more empowered, and most importantly, your ability to cultivate and sustain a community that is diverse and made up of all different characters. Lo and behold, when that starts happening, that big old demon king who has reigned for the longest amount of time and has gone out without any consequence or ramification, all of a sudden, the waves of karma start going their way. And it comes from unity, right? So, you know the routine. Grab a cup of cha, get comfortable. I want to talk to you about the power of community and why you absolutely need to make sure, not just next year, but for a really long time ahead, You pride yourself in being a great member of a community, helping sustain a community, and building bridges between other communities. Let's go, hibiscus.
Oh, the damage is done, baby. What if it was me? What if I was the one holding the gun? I can't save you. I won't save you.
So, for part 1 about our discussion about community, let's get a little bit cosmic, girlies and gays. Let's think about the current moment in time that we find ourselves in and what it has taught us. So, Rahu is currently going through the 9 types of Pisces nakshatras. Ketu is going through the 9 types of Virgo nakshatras. Usually, when we come to this karmic axis, the karma that unfolds during this time is all about dealing with the consequences of the life that we have chosen to live. So, when you look particularly at Rahu and Pisces nakshatras, it talks about stillness, right? Because again, Pisces for us is the point of death, honey. You're done. But for us, we believe in the process of rebirth. So death is not just this instant thing and you go up and down. No, there's a moment of you're stopped in your tracks. Then there is a longer moment of reflection, and then you understanding why you get dealt the hand that you do, and then you are rebirthed into your next life. Now imagine that in the present time. So let's go through the different Pisces nakshatras together. Let's start with Purva Bhadra, Bhadra 4, right? Purva Bhadra is a really interesting sign to me because it's very complex, right? It contains a story of a deity who does so much for the world, right? Prides itself on servitude, but literally understands itself to be deformed, ugly, and I would say generally has very low self-esteem. Now Rahu represents what? The divine plan being unveiled. It definitely indicates disruption and naughtiness, but also I would say provoking things so radical change can occur. Now let's look at that as a global community. You cannot ignore how from October 2023, and I want you to really marinate on that date, all the way until May 2025, that's the transit of this current astrological placement we're talking about, how people have finally switched on that without them engaging, being complicit, and abiding by these norms, society cannot function. So, if we have so much power about the money that is made, the lifestyles that are lived, and everything that unfolds around us, why do we feel so powerless? Why are we so poor? Why do we feel so terrible in ourselves when it's literally our energy, the exploitation of our labor, the minimizations of our identity and our feelings? Like, what the fuck is going on? So when you look at Rahu and Purva Bhadra, again, you always have to factor in we believe in free will. What you're looking at is initially the light is switched on. I bring more to the table than I thought I did. However, why do I feel so low in myself? What do I need to change to switch up this narrative, right? Then on top of that, think of the symbol of Purva Bhadra. It's 2 crossed swords. This talks about the ability to attack and defend oneself. And the story of Purva Bhadra is so closely linked to the story of Durga Ma when she's fighting that buffalo demon, which talks about 2 things, not just taking on an external demon, but it is the beginning of addressing perhaps the things inside of ourselves that let us down and conquering them. So collectively, think about what was happening from October 2023 onwards. because that's the point we're going to get to, right? Then I want you to think about Rahu in Uttabhadra, one of my favorite placements, right? That's the likes of Mariah Carey, that's the likes of Alexander McQueen, like a lot of my favorite, I would say, artistic talents you can find with Rahu and Uttabhadra. So there's a few things here. When I think of Uttabhadra, the first thing I've always thought of is immense wealth, but particularly generational wealth, right? So sometimes it can indicate a nepotism baby, but 9 times out of 10, it talks about someone who I would say has a sincere devotion or particular, like almost divine craftsmanship over their talent. Like no one else can do it like them. So Alexander McQueen and Mariah Carey, again. And with that real sincere devotion and a real dedication to the craft, naturally, money baby, but you're looking at a different kind of wealth, because Uttabhadra also deals with some very sad aspects, right? It's ruled by Saturn. So in Uttabhadra, we find often this conversation of individuals who are perhaps birthed into families. They can love them deeply, but something is wrong, right? Perhaps it's like a game of succession that's unfolding in the household in terms of cloaks and daggers and mental power struggles. Sometimes it can get much more, unfortunately, harder, and we can see people who will be birthed into abusive households. But what you're looking at is a lotus flower that if they can get certain stuff together and have enough courage to know that there's better out there, it blossoms through muddy waters. So what this talks about also is this journey of like, you know what, I actually am okay. Even if I don't know what the other side looks like, I'm more optimistic there is light somewhere else. So I'm going to begin pushing through that water, right? And when you look at Uttabhadra, traditionally, this used to be a huge sign of tantrics and shamans. These also are natural healers. When you have that energy of you, you are meant to be of service. That's why we always find it's really interesting when I see spiritual nakshatras in current day, because for me, my journey to Vedic astrology was not a straightforward one. I rejected 9 times, like a lot of it, right? But it's so funny to me when I started becoming a person of service in my own way that felt natural and organic to me, how life switched up. So there's a keen lesson here also that if you sincerely and from your heart think more about community and collective, and however you want to contribute to that, do. Remember, Saturn is a Karma enforcer. When Saturn sees you helping others, even if you've gone through painful experiences, you have also accumulated some type of wisdom, no? And perhaps you had to go through that because in your wisdom is a solution for other people's pain. You can be an inspiration. Uttabhadra is a huge inspiration to people. They're very inspirational. A lot of the most well-regarded public figures will be quite dominant in Uttabhadra placements. So food for thought, right? It's not just about you and your liberation. It's about how your struggles can be a light for other people who are struggling. And then what we're going to do is get you all together. And one by one, you share your knowledge, you share your resources, and then that lotus blossom that originally starts so deep under dark waters, hard, thick surfaces, one by one can start to see the light and glimmers. And then before you know it, the lotus flower blossoms. So you go in that direction, right? And then you have Revati. So Revati is, for all intents and purposes, the unconventional child, right? In Revati, we see a lot of different symbolisms, but I think the easiest way to describe it to people is, in the story of Revati, there is a very symbolic story of a princess who deeply wants something, but is so scared she will not ascertain it because she is so different to others around her. And essentially, there's 2 paths, right? There's a path of self-embrace, and in you being radically different, you very easily get that thing. Or you could spend a lifetime disliking yourself, minimizing yourself. But all that will happen is you get the short end of the stick, because the world will carry on. But does that make sense? You create the world that you experience. So when you navigate from a certain mindset, the world is not shit, you're shit. Hence, that's your experience of the world. But likewise, if you ever wish to change the world, change this. That's why in Dharmic faiths, one of the most common philosophies you'll find in many of them, whether it's Sikhi, Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, so on and so forth, is when you conquer self, then you conquer elsewhere. But until you conquer self, you will always be a victim. And then you will just go round and round and round. And it's not because life is designed to be cruel. It's no one else's fault, but to a certain extent, yours. And we believe a lot in actually hardships in Dharmic faiths. I know, like with the Western lens, they tend to think we're very love and light and fluffy. That's simply not true. That's the consequences of colonialism, cultural appropriation, and whitewashing. We fundamentally believe suffering will make you. And don't be so egotistical to think your suffering is just about yourself. All garms are interconnected. You never know who your story is meant to inspire and who it's meant to help. But when the moment comes, be composed, like we discussed in the other episode of Cosmic Jar. But then after that, when you are going through these things and the aftermath of whatever you've experienced, community. Because community can make or break something being repeated. It can make or break something being sustained and protected. Of course, by yourselves, you can absolutely go somewhere. But you cannot deny when you are with others, you don't just go further. I think you make way more impact, right? So again, going back to the story of Revathi, she has this God Almighty fit, right? To the point that it's pretty pitiful. But Rama comes down and is like, what the fuck is going on here? And then, she's hysterical. She feels some type of way. She's very scared that what she wants isn't going to happen. And he goes, may I remind you, there are several other timelines, other universes that are existing. And in those universes where I have also created you, you have always gotten what you wanted. But it's because you have braced everything how I designed you to be. You were not throwing away the gifts I gave you. You were not resenting them. I have designed you so perfectly to have those things. The only difference between here and the other timelines where you're flourishing is your outlook. There's a message here to stand up, embrace, and fall into the things that God has given you. Also, my favorite examples of Revathis are like Rihanna, Cardi B, Julia Childs. Like, I'm very fond of Revathi natives. I find them so interesting and I find them quite admirable, because how beautiful that you have the life that you wanted. And not only did you achieve what people mocked and believed couldn't be achieved, but you have lived life on your own terms, and you have lived by the values that others say would be of disservice to you. There's such story of inspiration, but in all three of these nakshatras, there's chaos. Think about Bhuvabhadra. You're looking at something where fundamentally low self-esteem, and Bhuvabhadra represents the dark side of politics, a lot of tension and issues and crime. Bhuvabhadra itself represents, I would say, almost like spiritual warfare, if I'm honest. Bhuvabhadra is so much about conquering and not allowing life to beat you down. And then you have Revathi, right? So the fear of being othered. Think about how community can shape those experiences and help us go along. So you have that, right? Essentially, you are now forced to deal with why your problems are your problems and start problem solving. And then you have Ketu, right? Ketu doesn't really like being in the Virgo nakshatras. Again, I'm pretty sure in different layers you have all experienced Ketu not enjoying being in those nakshatras. But the one thing I would say is incredibly positive. Ketu, when it goes through the Virgo nakshatras, talks about being liberated from manipulative speech. If you like, the man behind the big curtain is revealed to you, right? All different types of Virgo deal with espionage. They deal with things being done in the dark, like different organizations and societies, one could say. But when Ketu goes through it wrecks it, because it goes, okay, what I will do is, because Ketu represents venomous speech and the ultimate clarity and unpaid karmic debts. So what it sets into motion is people are going to start for whatever reason, questioning, why do I think and feel the way that I do? So because that process, and again, we are sitting under the same transits, this is not more relevant for one country than it is the other. It goes, shit. All of a sudden, the stuff that I was consuming before, or maybe the things that, I don't know, I was indifferent to or I agreed to, they do not feel the same. And now I'm going to push back because what I'm searching for is truth. But the issue is when you have stayed so, I don't think it's docile, but I think when you are so conditioned and groomed to normalize what I think is very harmful behavior, it is so shocking to the system. And then what's going to happen? You're going to become naturally and understandably very distrustful. But the kicker here is, think about who you must distrust. It's not everybody around you. The world is not a fucking hoax. Who was feeding you a certain mindset? Who has put you in a position where you don't feel too grand about yourself? You don't feel very hopeful. That is not the people who are beside you. And it's certainly, no one is beneath you, but if you feel like there are people beneath you, it's certainly not their fault. Who do you look up to? Who do you idolize? So then you also have the other part of Virgo that represents social values. So then you talk about a time of radicalization. People, and you're going to see this very strongly in 2025 in very insane ways. So make sure you subscribe to this page because we will gossip about it to high heaven. But the reason I'm saying the next 70 years ahead are historical is because when you put that all together, you now have a catalyst moment that's going to play over the next 2 decades at least very vibrantly of people saying, I no longer want to perform in this identity that you have given me. I would like to carve out my own identity and I want to feel safe, free, peaceful, that in me having that identity, I can prosper. You put that all together, that's a lot of change. That's a lot of resistance. And I think that's a lot of experimenting. But again, in that, you have to think about colonization and the ramifications of it, right? And it's something that I will always talk to you about because there's no way you could ever ignore every issue we have and how colonization is at the root of it, right? So one thing that always breaks my heart, and we're going to get into it shortly after this, is colonialism will make victims of oppression demonize one another. And what it is it will groom you to think whoever is closer to the colonizer is safer. So you're going to shit talk other communities because you think alignment with the oppressor will save you. Consciously or subconsciously is a different conversation, right? And also, they don't want you to guess that it's them that is the umbrella over all your pain. So instead of giving you the time, space, and the education and the critical thinking skills to go, it's them, they'll make you so riled up and hateful amongst each other, you never go on that thought journey. What we're looking at is the rise of class consciousness. And in the rise of class consciousness, community. When you have that all together, you succeed. But when you are hateful, you are divisive, and you are allowing yourself to be divided, baby, you're the perfect cosmic victim. And remember what I said, in the next year and a half, one of my biggest predictions is there will be biblical levels of humiliation for certain people. And it comes from a sense of superiority. It comes from a sense of wanting to create hateful communities. And the thing I want to emphasize, it was all avoidable, but you chose to use your free will in a really fishy way. God has to react, not in an equally fishy way because he's above it, but lessons have to be learned. And if you didn't want to learn that way, no problem, let's try a new approach. And because you believe in being so extreme, let me show you so extremely what this lesson is. And then it escalates. So you have that. So maybe it's a good time to talk to you about where Rahu and Ketu sit in the next 2.5 years and what our funky friend Saturn is going to be up to. So by the time we are truly into 2025, I think it's very fair to say the social contract is broken. But for me, this is not negative because we have to be honest with ourselves. I always make the joke, no one should feel embarrassed of unlearning things that they grew up with, because I don't think, well, at least on my end, anybody is birthed into a household with, I would say, the most healthiest and shiniest of beliefs, whether that's religious, cultural, political, whatever. None of us are, right? And that's the point of reincarnation. You don't come ready-made. If you did, either hallelujah, hello savior, like you 1010, you've chose to reincarnate to help people, very rare and very doubtful you'll be watching this video. There's something to work on, and that's okay, because as we work on it, what did I say? We get braver, stronger, kinder, wiser. It's all good, but it comes through friction, right? So now I want you to think about, okay, we've gone through this period of time where we acknowledge nothing is right, and however things are set up, whether it's in our home environments, professional lives, unfortunately globally and at a societal level, this shit stinks. And I don't want to Febreze it. I want to rip out the carpet that has the dog smell in it. I want to paint the new walls. We are dismantling this motherfucker and building it from scratch. But that's where we're at. We no longer want to mask a smell. We want to work out exactly where that nasty smell is coming from, address it, rip it out, learn our lesson, make sure the smell can't congregate again, and then we move. But that's a process. So when Rahu goes through the 9 types of Aquarius, I, again, very fond of Aquarius nakshatras. Not for the faint of heart, but a good time to read, let me tell you. So let's think of it like this. We'll work backwards. So then it's going to go into Purva Bhadra. When you look at Bhadra 1, 2, and 3, it belongs to the Aquarius nakshatras. So again, think of the same energy, right? This idea of learning how to fight back, right? Not be scared of being attacked. Rahu in the Aquarius nakshatras is, I think, much more punchy than Bhadra 4. So, you know, all of Aquarius belongs to Shiv, right? And if you think of Lord Shiv, think of it like this. Shiv was seen as a what? If you like, a religious emo figure, right? This is a man with dreadlocks, trippy makeup, chilling in mountains. He's not really following the forms of what we would discuss as other deities who are described as golden complexion. Like, you know, they're presented in a certain way. We're like, damn, put together. And Shiv's like, I don't fucking need all that, but Shiv is one of the most powerful. So you enter a time where it's like, in being different, it works out. There's no point in being shiny just so you look good to people who, when stuff happens, because they're all the same, they can't problem solve. There's no one there that has that different mindset that can find solutions. There's beauty in diversity. Your community has to look different, not just from a sake of, I would say, like political correctness and in sign of a just and healthy society, but it's also for your development. But when things are different, you learn more, you experience more, the way you understand yourself and others is so much richer, right? Shiv is the perfect example of that, because Shiv doesn't hang out with other flashy gods. Shiv hangs out with who? The ghouls, the Azores, the yogis who perhaps are quite deep into their devotion that they may be intimidating. Shiv prefers interesting characters because he also knows with interesting characters is sincerity. The point of Vedic astrology, it talks about the science of light. It's not to mold you to all be a certain way. It's about returning the light to you. It's about guiding the human back to the divine and making them understand how in their uniqueness and embracing that, how that has ripple effects and is good for collective society. And we always say, if you wanted to be measured on your spiritual progression, if you wanted to be measured by karmas, we always look at how sincerely and authentically are you good in community. This is not about, I would say, superficial charitable donations. That makes no difference. Just because you gave donations out of fear and please, like, save me from bad things, fuck off. How are you any different to an oppressor? It's all upper level. It's not deep saver. It's not deep service. But when you get someone, again, who's endured hardships, and through these hardships, they ascertain the most unique wisdom. Those are the game changers. There's also a real kindness in the heart. A real kindness. And it's just this beautiful alchemy that comes together. And it's also, I have a lot of, there's a difference to me from like these people who choose to make themselves outcast, and it's a lot of self-inflicted pain, to people who are organically oddballs. Because the organically oddballs, to me, how wonderful that you exist, because you can be a reminder, whether you like it or not, to other people. At any point, you can live life in a way that is authentic and sincere to you and still do so much. And you like yourself. And those people are often the most spiritual, right? So Aquarius and starts to think of Shiv, think about how he moves, think about the lessons he delivers, you and Shiv's energy now. Good luck and God bless. But yeah, when you look at Bhuva Bhadra, I think you see much more of collective justice. So Martin Luther King, Maya Angelou, they're Bhuva Bhadras, right? Even someone like Gordon Ramsay, he grew up in extreme poverty, right? Extreme poverty, saw a lot of pain. I believe his brother struggled with drug addiction. God forbid, his mother was a victim of domestic abuse. His actual original aspiration was to be a footballer, right? It's a guy who deeply loves sports. Life dealt him a hand heart, dealt him not the easiest of hands. And somehow, some way, he swam. And, you know, he finds himself in a kitchen. This kitchen, cookery, brings him a lot of confidence, discipline, I think a sense of home, where obviously the home is broken. And look at where he is now. But not also look at where he is now. I don't think people talk enough about how much good this man does. He put a bunch of working class chefs through, and now they work in Michelin restaurants, or they have them. Whenever he comes across young talents, like, he's a father, right? He thinks a lot about what he didn't have in his childhood, and he will give back. So, you know, you see him, oh my God, what is that cooking show? There's a cooking show in America. He does the adult version and he seems like quite, Watch the child version of that. Look how sweet he is. But that comes from what? What do you think? Hardships make you. That's why I said the first C was composure. Because then after composure, you're also good to give people in very turbulent communities hope. You know, so you guys know I study religion, theology, and philosophy, right? Regardless if you belong to an Abrahamic or Dharmic faith, what is a key trait in prophets and those holy figures? Community. And they built community with people who were outcasted, overlooked, and felt grave injustices. They didn't run away from them. They didn't shun them, you know, and even then they would have been ostracized for breaking bread with those communities. And now look. So when we find ourselves in historical times, and this is a game now, winners and losers, sorry to break it to you, but it will be that cutthroat from this moment onwards. Community. Because also, you know, when you lack the courage or you don't see the purpose in your work and you're not feeling too shiny in yourself, community will back you. Community will give you a reminder why you are important. What you are up to means something to someone, even if it no longer means something to you. Community, community, community. There's power in that. So look for that, appreciate that, sustain that, protect that, grow that. But diversify that. Your community can't just look like you. Your community can't just be your voices. Your community has to have that diverse element. We believe that in spirituality too. In Dharmic faiths, I'll take Sikhi for example. I grew up in an interfaith household. The basis of Sikhi begins with Guru Nanak Ji. He didn't sit there and say, these are my thoughts, this is great, this is what we must do. His journey begins by speaking to men of other religions, right? Other people all across Asia, Middle East, other parts of the world. Which Sikhi, again, is one of the youngest religions in the world, right? And when he has these conversations with different religious priests and different people and walks of life, he comes to the conclusion there's 100 paths and one source, and no path is better than the other. But in having a connection to the other paths, understanding the path that people choose to walk. Not only does it heighten the spirituality, there's a divine justice in that. And you can find the same blueprint in every other Dharmic faith, and I'm pretty sure most Abrahamic faiths. It's when they broke bread with others who perhaps did not share their philosophies, perhaps had not arrived at the same level of faith that they were when they met them. That community piece, it doesn't just like save people, it helps people. It does so much good, but you have to cultivate that, and you have to go out your way. You can't wait for these people to come to you. You go and break bread. You know, I'm a big believer. If you want to judge someone in true confidence, I saw a TED talk about it and I fully agreed. It's about golden retriever energy. It's the person who can say hello to everybody in the room and have that level of kindness. You're confident within, because it doesn't take anything from you to extend the hand. Think about that, hibiscuses. Then we go into Shatabishka. My fave. So with Shatabishka, so that's the midpoint of Aquarius. So you guys will know that I believe it's Aquarius type 3 to 6. Shatabishka is known as the king's fortunate star. But again, not for the faint of heart. It's symbolized by 100 stars. And we're going to talk about this soon because Saturn's gone direct. So we have to do a big power talk about how you're going to close out Saturn finishing in Aquarius and Nakshatras. But those 100 stars talk about our connection to the cosmos, to the divine. And it often talks about when you build the strength and courage to face past karmas who have subconsciously been hindering you back, then you flourish. Then you turn into the divine flower. But you have to deal with the past karmas. Think about that trajectory that we're on. This is not now's energy. This is what's coming. Community makes or break that, because Shatabishka is also known as the star of physicians, 100 demons and 100 healers. For Shatabishkas, I always say, because with them you see a lot of suffering, more I think than any other nakshatra, right? It's definitely top 3 for, I think, emotionally very painful experiences. Now it doesn't have to be anything crazy, but the hurt runs deep. But surface level, they are some of the most charming, funniest. Oh my god, these are people you want to go for drinks with and meals with, right? But they will never show you that they're struggling, because they fundamentally feel like if they share their adversities, their pains, they would be rejected, they would be it's very hard for them, right? But the God's blessing on Shatabishka that I always liked is when you heal the wounds that have been inflicted upon you, whether it's self or others, you will be given a wisdom that will heal and rejuvenate, inspire others. So if you cannot do it for yourself, think what you can do for others. And Shatabishka is all about like serving the world and all types of people. And it's really funny because Shatabishka has that ability to go back to the divine, because it's going towards death. So it no longer is so wrapped up in what other people think. It can make that trajectory. But yeah, how beautiful. Then you're going to have Rahu go into Dhanisha, Pada 3 and 4. So Dhanisha belongs part to Capricorn, part to Aquarius. Pada 3 and 4 is the Aquarius nakshatras. I want to point out Dhanisha and Capricorn functions very differently to Dhanisha and Aquarius. But long story short, Dhanisha is the power to bring someone fame and recognition. But why do they have fame and recognition? Because they were an oddball. They were the deviant. And again, there is a deep devotion and discipline into what they're doing. And Dhanisha and Aquarius is the best at cultivating community. Out of all the other nakshatras, when you see Dhanisha and Pada 3 and 4, depending on what planet is placed against, the hostess with the mostess, the politician that's for the people, the community leader, that friend that's like, everyone needs to come together, we've had a hard year, let's go for a meal. But think about that trajectory. Think about what we discussed. Think about where it's leading to. Community. And even the ruling deities of Dhanisha are the 8 Vasuls, right? So Purna Vasul, 8 Vasul is one of them. So the 8 Vasuls are the personification of the sun god, right? So sun to us, ironically, in the same breath, represents enlightenment. And remember, what's enlightenment? A process of facing all your negative and bad karmas and then the payoff. But you choose to actively deal with them. Hence, you become enlightened. You lighten the load of karmas, right? It also represents cool behaviors. It represents courage. It represents how we ascertain, I would say, a seat of power and public scrutiny, right? If you're really about it, you would endure whatever to make it happen. But by going through this toughness and adversity, you ultimately flourish, because the Nishta itself deals with, so Bunavasu, it's kind of sister sign in some ways. Bunavasu talks about the divine going into the human, right? So God will work for Bunavasu. Where the Nishta is this journey about back to God, right? I am going to find you. Me and you are now interlinked. You will give me inspirations and I will find you. Where Bunavasu is delivering something from God. Put that all together. Then you have Gaidal going through the 9 types of Leo. To put it simply, when Gaidal goes through the 9 types of Leo, a complete rebellion. I'll save this for the gossip that we'll have in a few weeks' time. Or again, you can follow me on my Patreon because I'm about to release the 2025 predictions and all of that. But that's it, baby. The figures are not influencing the way they would. The social contract is broken. People want different identities. We are changing. Now, the quality of that change, I think, really does depend in the communities we choose to build with one another and which community we choose to exist in. Because you've got to make room for, like, this transit applies to everybody. So whilst I'm most likely speaking to an audience that is, they believe in that connection, they see the perks in that, they want that, they thrive in that. There's also fuckers that will double down in their ignorance and extremism. That's not lost on me. But I have what you can call divine foresight. And I know I'm going to be laughing at you motherfuckers and you're going to give me a new version of Starbucks spirituality. And I look forward to the comedy that I'll make about y'all. But that's where we're at. And then finally, you have Saturn going through the 9 types of Pisces, which will be a very serious video. So fun. I really be my Wednesday Addams bag. But when Saturn makes its way through 9 types of Pisces, you're looking at paying the last debts to society. So bear in mind, we've lived in impressive societies across the world. So do with that information what you will. You are looking at the concepts of old age and senior people in a much more serious light. So what wisdom do we carry from our seniors? What seniors have been reigning for too long and it's time to move on, symbolically or physically? And also, I think you have the true breaking of this illusion where people think divisive and cult-like figures are their friends, their mothers and fathers, and that bubble is deeply popped. Hence, I kept warning about the biblical humiliation that wake up, because when it hits, no takesy backsies, and it will be a humiliation you feel. I feel like it's a humiliation that will label people, though. Like, I'll save that for next year's horoscopes. It's not looking good. But yeah, that's where we're at, right? The social contract is broken. We are aware we are our own saviors. However, we are also aware we are not alone. Like hibiscuses, be honest with yourself. When you think about all that we are learning about the different kinds of abuses in religion, the different kinds of political divisiveness and very intentional division, cultural issues we have, they are not unique to one community. So if you are a marginalized person, let's say a queer or someone who identifies as non-binary or woman watching this, do you think you are the only one that experiences that feeling of being disregarded or somehow feeling a burden? Because I guarantee if you're South Asian watching this, you could think about a Caribbean or an African person. They get it, hibiscuses. You can look to East Asia. They get it, hibiscuses. You can look to South America. They get it, hibiscuses. So you tell me, why don't you all get together and start platforms, spaces, communities, products, services, like whatever your jam is, and create something beautiful? So there's power in numbers. And also, you're not the only ones. So don't you think when people see solidarity in a community that perhaps surface level seems so different to it, but isn't, what do you think that does for a motherfucker? And would you not want to be involved in that? As opposed to be globally united in hate with people. Because think about this. When people are united in ignorance and hate, and we'll just say like generally nasty spiritual scab stuff, it is temporary. Hate is an illusion, it's a maya, so it can disperse at any time. Usually when things are rooted in universal truths, so a global right to justice, a global right to education, a global right to existing and not being feared or suppressed, that thing is forever. It's in Dharma, so it will exist forever, it will be protected forever, and it will be sustained forever. Hate always changes. It's very flaky. And also one thing you'll notice is, and again, I think you're going to see a lot of this, just give it a few months and hate can turn on one another. Because what it is, when people are filled with hate, if you want to be like philosophical about it, it's not about power. It's not about superiority. It's about insecurities. Something is fundamentally in the person's soul where they do not feel like they are enough. So to feel like they are more, they have to take away from others. And they'll do that in different ways. It's not about power. It's how do I define and build that sense of self and oomph when I feel like I have so little. And unfortunately, sometimes people will choose the path of hate. I also think hate sometimes is a reflection, again, of perhaps the things we don't want to acknowledge about ourselves. So I always joke about, you know, when people are very like homophobic, transphobic, growing up I always found it very weird because I was like, why are you so bothered, sorry to be so cross, about other people's holes? I never in my existence have given a flying fuck about who someone is bedding, who they're because it doesn't affect me. Oh my god, I don't give a fuck. Even when I think, you know, like transphobia, and I really would love to do an episode on this soon, just give it got time, busy. But even for me, it'd be really weird because from a spiritual lens, you've got to remember, I've been reading since I was basically a child. And as I've got older, I've gone like more outside of my own community. I'm like, but it's written here that they will express their identity differently. They will go through a huge transformation. Why are you so bothered? It's destined. They're living in their destiny. The fuck? And I'm like, this shit is older than any civilization on this earth. This is from the Indus Valleys, motherfucker. Who are you? If they had this shit back in the Bronze Age, who are you, you weirdo? And it's also like, I've never saw anybody, I don't think anybody's else expression of identity takes anything away from my expression of identity, right? Because I definitely don't think it's cool to be like I love the cusses, but you know when people are like, you're just mad because they're prettier than you, and I'm like, there's probably something to that. Like, why are you so bothered? Is it because someone chooses to do their makeup better than you and they're more tapped into the expression? But all it is creativity. Ultimately, you have a problem because they have come to a point against all challenges, all adversities, to have enough courage, self-love to express identity without fear. And it's not that the dangers have decreased around them. Unfortunately, they have increased. But there's power in that. So yeah, I think about those points, hibiscuses, because it's in community you are going to find solutions. I think you are going to deliver a stronger opposition. And we have a chance of creating new norms that we can sustain that are helpful for everybody. Because how on earth, you are never free and you should never feel comfortable if within your existence, people are being hurt around you in whatever ways. Because I always tell you, God is a comedian. And I just think like, we don't have to agree with God's jokes, but they certainly have a punchline. And it's funny how sometimes you think you may be watching a comedic set and then right at the end, God's like, but you're the punchline. You're the joke. You weren't watching me perform. I was watching you perform. And you fucking failed. Ta-da. And the curtains close. But reincarnation. But yeah, there's a lot there. So I also wanted to start sharing with you the good in community, because there are so many influential, not just activists, but generally like liberators, freedom fighters that I really admire. And they talk so well to the power of community. So let's go through that now. Hibiscuses. Inevitably, we are stepping into 20 years where you are going to see all different kinds of people fighting back, demanding justice. They are no longer going to be accepting the structures that have ultimately failed them. And don't forget, when Saturn goes through the 9 types of Pisces, it doesn't do well with accepting suppression or oppression. It will want to punch back. And remember what Saturn is. At its core, It is the destroyer of all illusions. So put it this way. Whilst sometimes when we go through strife and troubles, we often feel like it's just us, right? That's very human, that's very normal. But the truth is, that is not the objective reality. There are others that suffer like you. There are others that are having a hard time like you. There are others who crave the same things as you, value the same things as you, appreciate the same things that you do. So instead of keeping up this illusion of division, let's fuck it off, right? How it gets fucked off, there's no guarantee that has to be pleasant, but it has to be fucked off. So perhaps sometimes it might be like this. Often I find when people are very susceptible to extremism is usually because they want to double down on my community has to be exactly like me, whether that's an ethnicity thing, a religious thing, political, right? And often they break their own hearts because the longer they stay in these communities and just give it time, they will find, even though they are part of these communities and they have these intentions and causes, sometimes people can be a part of our causes and our community, but they're quite destructive. They're not as wholesome or guided by the same things. And then their heart breaks because you have built this very temperamental bubble around yourself that as long as I stay here, I'm safe. And that's ultimately what community is about, right? It's safety, it's education, it's protection, it's all these wonderful things. But when you indoctrinate yourself into that temperamental bubble, and it has all these, I would say, conditions and limits and restrictions, does that really feel like protection and safety? Do you think that's something stable? If your community can only thrive in particular circumstances, or it can only appear good in particular lights, do you think that's correct? Do you think, by any chance, there is something that might need evolving? And do you think by any chance there's people we could let in, whether it's spiritually, physically, oh my god, that sounds so bad. I was gonna say physically let people in. I'm so sorry. I am a fiend for these innuendos. But my point was, whether it's intellectual, emotional, whatever, but are there other people we could invite in to help harbor these changes? And then don't you think it's going to be stronger because there's power in numbers? I want you to think about the news headlines that are currently unfolding. I said very early on that everyone needs to kind of pattern up and be about whatever they're about, because everyone has different purposes and they are all equally important, because the game changers will be put on their path and they are the catalyst for the destruction of colonialism, for healthier, more prosperous societies and norms. And it's not lost on me how these oddball figures, in whatever ways that they have shown what they're about. And isn't it interesting how oppressors are so scared because the sense of unity and camaraderie they have created amongst vast different types of people. So the examples I'm about to share, I'm actually really proud of how I cultivated them because they came through people who came for readings. I have been practicing, oh my god, for nearly 16 years as of next year, right? I'm getting old, baby. No, I love it. I think I get hotter with age. Anyway, but the one thing I think always surprises people, when I tell you I read for the world, I read for the world. I have nearly every nationality you can imagine come for a reading. All the different religions, all the different sexualities, all the different genders, all the different generations. And it's so funny, over time, as I think got more comfortable in my spiritual practices and I myself have matured, and I don't know, I'm at this point in my spirituality where there's it's very cheesy to say, but there's a certain beauty that's starting to exist in it that I haven't felt before. And I feel like I see its reflection in the people who come for readings, right? Because I was never, I'll be honest, I was never satisfied or that happy just reading for other South Asians, right? Because it felt really monotonous at one point. And then I was really, really scared, but I opened my window to I was like, hey, we'll see the TikTok. And I was like, no one's going to want to come. They're going to probably think this is weird. I'm probably about to experience the most levels of racism and fucking discrimination. I'm probably going to have the mightiest of tantrums and fight back spice I've ever had. And it simply, I mean, yeah, there were glimmers of it, obviously, because algorithm can't control it. But all in all, like 98% have just been like strangers from all across the world. And when you ask me like, where do you get your wisdom for Vedic astrology and da, because I'm getting to a point where it's getting richer and sharper than I think the average. It's not me, it's whatever divine beauty God has given me via the people who come for readings, the knowledge I have now, and I think moving forward is going to come from these people, because I see the nakshatras within you, right? So obviously I know how to bring them to life, I know what it means for you, but you bring that knowledge to life, you validate the things I think and feel about nakshatras. So community, right? It didn't come from a book, it didn't sit by me, myself in a fucking mountain. It's communities, breaking bread with people, and it's something I'm immensely proud of, and I hope remains the case forever. Even YouTube, that was a step up, probably by force, because I always joke God speaks to you in a language that you understand. But yeah, it's another community, right? I'll build one, hopefully, God willing. But yeah, let me have a look at my notes. So there was a freedom fighter called Jose Rizal, right? So he's Filipino. Obviously, why am I saying obviously? You actually may not know. It's okay, I didn't know. So if you didn't know, the Philippines have actually been colonized the longest out of any country in Asia. You're looking at, I think, near to 500 to 600 years, right? Predominantly by the Spanish, but there have definitely been other countries that have come in and attempted to colonize the Philippines. And one of their resistant fighters, Jose Rizal, I hope I'm saying that right, guys, I have the worst pronunciation you could ever imagine. He said, a people without a sense of community are a people without a future. How profound, how interesting. And I believe that, right? So I want you to think about what I said earlier. By yourself, you can definitely get somewhere, but will you get the furthest you could have? Will you make the most impact? That's where the conversation is to be had. Think of it like this, right? I'll share a personal example with you. Anything you see of me is not an individual effort. Whilst I appreciate I'm a little bit more confident and extrovert and out there than some other people that may come to mind for you, I am like that because I am backed by community, right? I grew up in an interfaith household, so I saw diversity from different lenses of religions initially. I think that gave me an upper hand when it came to the traditional education of Vedic astrology. How would you even feel if I told you the wisdom I have didn't just come from the Vedas and Puranas, it came from studying all different types of religious scriptures? I've told you, I've been fortunate enough to start learning and studying the Quran. I read it when I was younger. My grandfather used to speak Urdu, Hindi and Punjabi. We would have really interesting conversations when I was younger. Then you have the Guru Granth Sahib, and then when I got older and introduced to Abrahamic faiths, then you have the Bible, then you have the Torah. You have all these lenses, and whilst it's none of these religious scriptures' intention to teach about astrology, but I think some of the most potent stuff I possess came through the studying of these different religions. So diversity of thought has given me diversity of wisdom, which again, you all lap up and is of service to you, but it came from me not staying within inside of it, right? And then I think also what it did for me is my community came bigger, because the one thing I really bond with is obviously, I think from an identity level, I've always struggled with being religious, because I'm like, I am not these Puritan fuckers who are like, I'm a virgin, no, I denounce this. And I'm almost like, oh, fuck off. But like, you're so muggy, like your whole personality is rejecting things. Like, I hate it, right? But then also, I am deeply reflective, horribly superstitious, very, very faithful, and I have core values. And it always felt a bit mishmash. And it's something that definitely I think I struggled with until I started venturing out. And then lo and behold, when I made friends with women who came from different faiths, I was like, oh, the girl who struggles with her job is no different to me that struggles with like the shame around eating meat and like the struggles with giving up and being able to do a proper fast. The girl who is Jewish and is struggling to find like the right life partner that gets different aspects for her is no different to me, because again, trying to explain, even if they are from the same community as you, to someone that, oh, what do you do? It's so weird to call it a job, because even then I'm like, how on earth would you ever explain to someone that you gave up a pretty like influential, very high paying job in tech and finance, where like lived a very different life before, to then being like, yeah, I like astrology and this is what I do when I talk to people about religions and it brings me happiness and I get to talk about, like, does that make sense? That's a hell of a conversation to have with somebody. And I don't think many people are designed to probably take that on the chin, but yeah, cool, that's normal. It's not normal. I know it's not normal, right? But then that's what I mean when I started to talk to different women of different faiths. I was like, oh, we actually all go through the same kind of difficulties, embarrassment, struggles. And I was like, and also in that, when you think about my trajectory as an astrologer, it's one thing I think to be appreciated by your own community. It's a different thing when the things you care about, you're passionate about, and you would like to learn about hits on a global scale. There are definitely times where I'm like, I'm tired, I don't want to do this feels really silly to me. Surprisingly, I'm very, very easily embarrassed by what I do, because I'm just like, I'm a normal person, I walk on grass, I breathe air, like I am fully functional kind of thing. But when you see so many different characters of so many different ages, it does something for them, or it just has that resonance. It definitely has given me a fire in my belly when mine has gone kaput. So I think it's that, right? When you have a sense of community, it will allow you to fulfill your purpose and you see a future, right? Because this is my thing. People who think they're above community, or it's just me, myself, and I, at some point that's going to get rocky. Because whilst it's important to exist for yourself, there are karmas that are all interconnected. So it'd be silly of me to ignore other people around me, or not be of service to them, or care for them, or value, or at least listen to them, and think it's not going to impact the way I grow and flourish. Even if you want to be superficial about it, if you're business minded, you have a consumer, no? So how does your brand and business build if you don't think the health, the protection, the money, the well-being of your consumer is not cultivated and cared for? Same goes for art, same goes for media, sports, even stuff like military, government. I'm like, when you have that community, because also you respect what other people do. So like, there's huge conversations on the police. We all are in agreement. All police regimes across the fucking world are fucking awful. We have no trust in them. But imagine if we had a better, because I have two theories on this. If we did not have colonial societies, and this has been proved many times in history before colonial got its nasty hands on it, when people have a collective sense of community, there's naturally collective protection. And you see a decrease of crimes, you see a decrease of predatory behaviors, it becomes quite safe. So one could argue, when you build a sense of community and you have that with different groups, we by default live in a safer society, right? And we can navigate tensions and issues in a way that people trust. Likewise, for whatever reason, if the police do have to exist, say that with a pinch of salt, hibiscuses, gotta play both sides. If we have a sense of community where people are cared for and A, B, and C, do you think we would get these deviants? Because you would be like, these are my people, I need to make sure they're safe and good. Because, warriors exist. That's an energy, that's the whole thing for us too. So if we have to put the warrior into whatever persona it has in this reincarnation, surely we can keep the warrior on the middle path when it has a sense of sympathy, connection, and understanding of all groups of people within inside of its community. And then surely even that, if you really believe in combat and this idea of like, are you not stronger if you can trade notes with other warriors? So yeah, I think, and again, to the point of eradication, because we are in the downfall of colonialism, I think one of the things I found difficult, and I'm not doing in 2025, is when I originally wrote my predictions, which have all come true, I will go. I do not think I considered the venom the oppressors would have in their fight back. Because I said stuff, and it happened, but I definitely think I underestimated how hard they would try. to keep onto things, the propaganda, and like it's definitely been one of my rougher experiences. And of course it would happen in a Saturn ruled year. We love you, bestie. Train me to be more clear-minded. But I also think about this. Colonizers can only thrive when they destroy your identity. You have to take this part seriously. An oppressor in a colonizer's job is the following. I must destroy your identity completely so you assimilate. And when you assimilate, then I know I have full control for my blueprint to always function. There will be less threats to it malfunctioning. There will be less liability. I can't make my money, my wealth this way. So I have to destroy that in every way I can. It often begins with arts and culture. Then it will go into lifestyle. Then it will go into religion. Then it will go into languages. And then it's like a disease, hibiscuses. It will spread to every part of the body. When you have a community, what do you preserve? It gets harder to destroy. Think about current times. Think about what they are censoring. Think about what they're up to. When you express yourself and you empower others to do you know what you're preserving? And that's why I was trying to teach you, like, yes, we are the main characters in our own story, but we have a role to play in other people's. The struggles are interconnected. When you have community, you have a future. Or at least you can preserve what has been. But without that, what are we up to, hibiscuses? Where do you think we're going? How do you think this ends? And you have to make room for free will, unfortunately. I would love it if I could just speak my shit and disregard free will, because I would feel horribly powerful in that case. But I would also feel more reassured because the stuff that comes out my mouth, I would have very little fear of other stuff happening. But you have to make room for free will, and we all sit under the same transit. So whilst we're building community, others are building community. The differences and the successes in the diversity of those communities, whether you fucking like it or not. That's a hardcore truth. And the next is the inclusion of that society, the inclusion of that community, right? There's layers to it, hibiscuses. A thing that came to mind for me, I love the Irish. I by default, obviously I grew up watching Ben Like Beckham. I knew it was about Irish people from young fam. But how the Irish have expressed their solidarity has been nothing short of spectacular. Even when under immense scrutiny from these other fucking waste man countries and their waste man values, morally fucking bankrupt, they just stand 10 toes on business. And it's just, that shit to me is very inspiring. And even people who exist in countries where, I said fascism is going to be reestablished, every country is feeling layers of that. Even those different minorities in those countries who are already suppressed, already the victims of grotesque violence, the way like they have stood up and in their own wonderful ways shown their solidarity, I'm like, that's some powerful shit. Because also when you do that, do you know the fear you put into them? They're going to get nastier for sure. We have not even seen the height of their fucking violence and stupidity, but we gonna. But the thing is, they're looking more stupid and idiotic and foolish because community. They did not think of class consciousness. They did not bet on people having that sense of interconnection. They literally thought their division would work. And it's not. And it'll take time. Nothing's perfect. But this is what I'm saying. As Jose was sharing with us, when you have community, you have future. And without community, you're in a very sticky place, which actually leads me to my second thinker. Her name is Kimberly Crenshaw. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm so sorry. I feel like I dog out everybody's names. Anyway, so she is a huge influencer of how we understand modern day intersectionality. And I love her work. So if you get time, please go and explore it. I think it's very relevant to the experiences that we're going to be going through. But she has this line that goes, when we show up as our full selves in community, we make space for others to do the same. This is how solidarity grows. Sip your chai. I'm just going to put my laptop back and we'll discuss. Hello. So think about what I was sharing earlier in the video, right? We are in this time where globally, a lot of people are going to go through very deep identity changes. For most people, that would be validation, the fire in the stomach, they're riled up, they're going on the path. Remember, we are now in this stage in 2025 where the game changers are put into their paths and they're going to be huge catalysts for the destruction of colonialism. But in that journey, what inspires others and helps them build that audience, that community, that backing is them expressing their identity in a way that is not influenced and unaffected. And I think it'd be very fair to say, not frightened by the oppressors and their usual tactics. And because they do that, it influences the other way people are, right? So let's talk about Palestine, right? It is not lost on me how symbols and clothing and other cultural items that mean so much to Palestinians have been adapted by other communities to show their solidarity. And in that journey of adapting their symbols to show the solidarity and what they're on and all those wonderful things, it's also sparked like divine rage and inspiration in other communities saying, hey, look how the oppressors are treating these people. They are going through, you know what, like 100%. I don't even think it's a Holocaust. I think it's a Holocaust. Like it's all of it I look at and I'm like, this is systematic destruction and eradication of a community here, right? But to see that horror unfold has put a different level of fire in other people to say we have to preserve and we also have to figure out what our identities mean in the modern day. So they try this shit with us? Nah. And it's just this really spicy alchemy of self-expression, igniting the fires of liberation, of decolonization, and like I'm a deeply like sensitive, reflective person, and I swear to God, I have never been more prouder to exist. I know a lot of people like get me out of this hellhole in A, B, and C. Firstly, pattern up. How could you not be proud to exist in a time where collectively all different types of people are coming together? They are learning from one another, they're educating one another, they're having fun together, they're protecting one another. Like in my head, and maybe it's the ADHD and my 12th house stadium, but for me, it's the perfect storm to get the solutions we're going to need for the long term. And isn't it interesting how so much of it is tied to the identity of expression? Because again, like I share this a lot. I'm deeply unimpressed by other South Asians at the moment. The way these sloppy bitches have sold out is not lost on me. The way they choose to align with the oppressor fully disgusts me. And am I surprised? No, because oppression for me, this is the thing. The issue with oppression sometimes is we tend to think of our oppressors in these very binary forms. You have to look at oppression as an energy. It can shape shift into different ethnicities, different facets of religion, different facets of politics, but oppressors are always going to oppress. That's the name of the game. And how are they thriving? Via community. So to some extent, fight fire with fire, my guy. Come on now. But it's just, and again, I think that's why I back diversity of community so much, because it's when the community is diverse, different voices are heard. Not only do we get better solutions, more interesting things, I just think it empowers people. It allows them to grow in really beautiful ways that I just simply do not believe you can do in a really homogenous kind of environment, right? The best comes from diversity. And the issue is that when we tend to allow homogenous thinking to stay together, we only appreciate one way of life, it does cause what I feel is like a journey of destruction. Because often when I'm in like spicy readings for people and I've got to yell at them to like make them switch up, I often find myself saying, how dare you stay in a static state? Why the fuck are you crying over A, B, and C? You have chose to stay in those patterns. It doesn't matter what mantras I give you. It doesn't matter if I gave you the most spiciest tantric rituals to do. You fundamentally are keeping yourself in one state of mind and you're expecting these wonderful outcomes. It doesn't work like that. There is an alchemy, there is a magic, there is a divinity that happens in diversity, that happens in movement, that happens in changes. Of course, traditions should be respected and upheld, but at one point, traditions weren't traditions. They were new and innovational. if you care so much about others and even self, it is in your fucking MO to have that diversity, to have that ranges of expression, and then have discernment to know what is smart for the long term and perhaps what is just fire by trial. We tried it doesn't work, no problem. And don't be scared of experimenting. This is my thing. People are like, it's better to stick to what you know and blah blah blah. Is it? Look at the predicaments that we find ourselves in, culturally, politically, religiously, albeit physically. We're in the age of a healthcare crisis, which is one of my biggest predictions for 2025, right? We need innovation, we need experimenting, and it's okay if we get it wrong, but getting it wrong will ultimately lead us a path to getting it right. But you're only going to know when you experiment and when you try. We do not need to return to fascism, and it's shown globally, historically, whenever you have homogenous societies and fascist societies, economically everything tanks, everything goes to shit, and they don't live past like a few couple of years. They eventually bite dust. And then what happens? The invitation of immigrations, the invitation of diversity, wanting to pride yourself on inclusivity. Wake up, hibiscuses! Now on that, I should probably talk to you about the dangers of building a community that's truly too much like you. So, whilst I absolutely will always back existing inside of community, and literally for me, community births so many beautiful things, right? People, services, inspiration. Like for me, it goes hard, but you also have to acknowledge the toxicity of perhaps existing inside of unhealthy communities. Because for me, when you end up, I would say, in the wrong community, or a community that is built on hate or is overly homogenous, spiritually, I've always seen it as a disease that will slowly kill the soul, right? It's like a cancer that spreads. Perhaps initially it starts with behaviors, but then it goes to the heart, and then it goes to the mind, and then it goes to the soul, and then all you're seeing is the degeneration of someone. You're literally seeing like life prana sucked away from them, and it's something, you know. We are also in an epidemic of loneliness, understandably so. That's colonizers' MO, is to divide, to conquer, to make you feel like you're lonely, and the only time you can find community is being exploited for your labor and your ideas. And in that, it's understandable that people congregate with perhaps not the best of people, or a bunch of disfranchised people all get together, and instead of processing and handling the oppression in a way where it actually deals with like the source of the rot, it gets a bit Batman villainy. It is what it is. Free will, baby, free will. Because I think it is, right? Whilst I see communities as a huge vessel of support and solidarity, community can very easily fuel fascism and injustices, right? We've seen it time and time again. When communities prioritize, I think, hierarchical structures, very exclusionary ideologies, I think conformity over inclusivity, they become the breeding ground for so many types of discrimination and hate, and that's not what we're aiming for, you know. So I wanted to share with you some of my favorite thinkers from India. So there's a guy called A.R. Desai, right? So he basically was born in 1950 and passed away in 1994. Reincarnation, baby, it's me, not really. But essentially, he was what you would consider a Marxist sociologist. So he basically was very heavy on critiques against traditional Indian communities, and he felt like what Indians were priding as traditional communities were not. They were actually the residue of colonial ideologies and the trauma caused by colonialism. So people were reverting to very poor behaviors and poor understandings in the world to kind of heal, should we say, a victim wound. And he felt like, again, India in its nature is not capitalist. So colonialism created capitalism. So to strive to want to have our economy built off capitalist structures, it's going to lead to gross inequalities, and we already struggle with the caste system, and it's going to lead to dire exploitations. And my man was saying this when India became independent. And now look at where we're at. If you guys didn't know, I'm Punjabi, and you need to know I stand 10 toes on business when it comes to freedom and marginalized groups in India. I'm a Kassan baby over here. But he has this quote, and I want to share it with you, right? Because he had this really wonderful piece of work. It's called The Social Background of Indian Nationalism. So it's published the year after India got independence. I think there are English translations now, so by all means, please go and read it. It's a fantastic piece of work, right? Because it talks about the internal conflicts inside communities who want justice and want liberation in this happier life, but there's a lot of structural challenges and changes that need to be addressed. But anyway, in this book, he says the following: the village, idealized as the heart of India, must be seen in its real form as a site for exploitation and struggle. Bars, fam, bars for days. But let's unpack it, right? The point of community is to allow a person to flourish. If in a community, and I'm not talking about deviant, gross, extremist behavior, I'm talking about if you exist in a community that makes you feel ashamed about the circumstances in which you were birthed, where you are educated, how you live, who you want to be, something is wrong. And it is also not a sign of a healthy community if we only allow you to flourish should you conform. That is wrong, hibiscuses, right? Think about the messaging there. And please do think about yourselves. Like, we can be really superficial about it, right? If you find yourself constantly going to dinner and catch up with friends who can only really break bread with you when so this is again really superficial. Let's take the topic of drinking, right? So I'm someone who definitely struggles with alcohol. Not in like, I'm not an alcoholist or anything like that, but basically, I definitely think I sometimes drink when I don't necessarily have the intention to drink, and it just comes from like being in a social setting. And then afterwards, because I have to do so much prayers and mantras through Vedic Astrology, at this moment in time, I have a proper guilt complex about it. That's where I'm at. But doesn't mean I don't have a glass of red wine and all of that. It's like a real like a complex subject with me. But I want to give this example. Do you think you're in the right community or friendship, like whatever social circle, if the only time you can hang out is when you binge drink, or you often find yourself gossiping about others, or doing just stuff that like stuff that you're over and you understand is not good, but for some reason when you break bread with these people it can only ever be those things. You know, when people talk about the law of attraction, it comes from dharmic faith. We've always said energies and garments are interconnected. So the community you choose to participate in, congregate, sustain, however you show up in community, has a huge impact on how you grow and fit in the world. That is a universal truth. And also, do you know what it is? There's a danger when we romanticize communities, hugely, right? So for me, I am deeply proud to be Punjabi. I always make this joke, but before anything else, I am Punjabi. You need to fundamentally understand that about me, because that will influence the work I produce, how I feel about the world, all of that. My Punjabiness has the most weight over my identity and how I move in the world. I'm deeply proud to be Punjabi, right? And I will always show off our culture, our language, our food, our people, the different religions that exist. I'm so proud of it. But in the same breath, I can acknowledge the following. We have a horrible level of issues with alcohol and drug inside our community. So what looks like the playful Punjabi, I do not romanticize that, because sometimes when we're romanticizing, like, oh, they're just being playful and jokey. No, this is a person who has issues with alcohol and drugs. So whilst you think it's goofy, cutesy behavior, no, this is a sign of depression. This is a sign of unhealthy coping mechanisms. We don't need to normalize being intoxicated. Right, we don't need to normalize perhaps harmful substances. Just being like, our people like a good time. No. That's our people like a good time because they have not fully processed the trauma of partition, of immigrating to different parts of Europe and North America. Like, there's pain in that. It's not a party feature, my guy. I will never So again, I'm very passionate about Punjabi music. I believe we are the best lovers, the biggest flirts. Like, it's us, baby. It's us and nothing else. right? But alongside that, I do not then minimize we have a huge issue with domestic abuse in Punjab, in South Asia, right? My experience of sharing, like, this is my man, he loves and devotes and all that, and we have this Punjabi Jat type of love. That is one experience, but it's not all experiences, because the girl, again, who is the same religion as me, same like different facets of identity, she could be stuck in a predicament equally with the same Punjabi guy, and that could be a piece of shit. But what I'm saying is, there has to be a level of groundedness, balance, accountability, right? We can 100% love our communities and our heritage and the things we break bread with. But we also have to be accountable enough to understand what is not great. And then it is our duty to change that. Life is not a static thing. Of course, there are conversations around preservation and appreciation and like values and all that, because that we are only as strong as our roots. But when there are certain parts of our tree that are rotted, we should not wait for them to organically fall off. We must actively remove them, and something else beautiful can grow in its place. So again, in this time, really hold yourself accountable in terms of who you're gravitating towards, what it brings out in you, what you contribute to that space, and don't over romanticize it. Just remember what I said about the biblical humiliation coming soon. Keep it together, And then I want to break down like more points around this idea of romanticizing communities, right? Because I actually had 8 for a Saturn ruled year, so I'll go through it quickly. So number 1, right? When you congregate in a community that's like exclusivity versus like the us mentality, you are not in the right group if they require your loyalty by demonizing or marginalizing other people. Something has gone wrong here, hibiscuses. It is not godly. It's just not right. It's like wake up, babe. Again, just think about the fucking Nazi Germany. Look what they did. And it happened over time. It was this slow demonization of a group that then desensitized people, made them docile, and then they inflicted the most amount of suffering. Don't become docile. Do not become emotionally switched off when it comes to suffering of other people. The second one I want to show was authoritarian leadership and conformity. When you have a centralization of power, that is fascism, right? It is not healthy to look at any leaders in a maternal, paternal, savior way. Something has gone wrong and is going to go even wronger when you have that idolization. I say this a lot, right? I know you guys see me as spiritual babe when I'm on. Thank you. But one thing you should know is I don't actively seek God within people. I know God works through people, but I would never look for God in a man. Not just a person too, but definitely not in a man. It's not happening. That's a very personal relationship, and God is in everything. So for me to only acknowledge one thing as a source of divineness, holiness, or like the cosmos stuff that I'm into, no void. And when there's a centralization of power, there's societal pressures that come with it, because all of a sudden we exert pressure on people when they don't align with our majority views, and then we start doing a bunch of weird shit that we will not be proud of. And again, when there's a centralization of power, we will silence critical thinking. We will silence voices that can make a change. It gets very, very murky, hibiscuses. The other thing I want to point out is cultural homogeneity. I'm so sorry for my mispronunciation of words. But essentially, when we become culturally intolerant of other cultures, shit show. Wrong community. We're going to do some nasty shit in there. Because the thing is, when we resist diversity or we prioritize other cultures, and we kind of have this structure of whose culture is great and who is not, that's what allows systemic injustices to be implemented. So think about xenophobia, racism, homophobia, transphobia, all the phobias and ism. That's where it comes from. It comes from cultural intolerance, because you are basically saying we only like culture this way. So when other cultures don't do that thing, you actually, you would be complicit in the harm of other people. And that's gonna have some economic healthcare. Yeah, it's gonna have some nasty ramifications, you know. Then we have fear and economic insecurity. Sorry. So again, when you're in unhealthy communities, there's a lot of like wealth shaming. There's a lot of like this thing of like, you will not be safe if you don't abide by us, and you will be poor. There's a lot of weaponization of wealth, actually, was a thought that I had. So again, when you're in different community spaces, like for instance, very superficial, but like if you can only hang out with people and you have to look a particular way, spend a certain way, something's wrong. That's weird. That's really, really weird. That's not right, hibiscuses. And likewise, if you hang out with people that make you feel insecure, that perhaps the way you spend money or you cultivate money is silly or stupid, or basically it's money shaming. And I think it's so funny that the downfall of capitalism, the way people are deviating, you know, I love to see it. But yeah, essentially, when you're also in unhealthy communities, the note I had was like, oppressors will exploit fears about resource scarcity. So they'll say there's only enough jobs, immigrants are taking our job, and then that's the whole thing. And it's like intentional job loss. So think of the last mass layoffs. And it's just basically, it's like the cultural erosion of others to explain. Basically, what they'll do is they'll eradicate other people and they'll blame others, but they won't own up to how their oppression and their unhealthy ways of how they think communities should be navigated and protected is ultimately also leading to economic failure. I believe that was my point. The next one I had was the spread of propaganda and ideological indoctrination, right? So basically, when communities get into this space where there's a lot of like really strong internal cohesion, it turns into an echo chamber, right? And it's going to say any other voice that is not in agreement must be silenced. And then propaganda begins to be accepted without question. So this is what I'm saying. Like, oppression is not like just this outright imprisoning of people. It's the slow moving dehumanization of groups. And when you dehumanize them, you slowly silence them and you take away their free speech. You make them seem like scary figures. You use them as scapegoat figures. Bro, you're in really murky, scary waters. You need to abandon ship. And again, basically, when you have any community that resists critical dialogue or cannot for the life of it allow different voices and thoughts into the room, that's how extremist ideology spreads. I would know. Where do you think Starbucks spirituality came from? It originally started with me experiencing different dharmic faiths and like predators who were using it to like harm women and scare people and like perpetuate like racism and religious violence. Then you have institutionalization of inequality. So basically, when communities are too homogenous or too samey, this is what. So they basically look at it like this: if I said to you, you can only exist in my community, but only if you follow my religion, only if you express your culture the way I do, and all of a sudden I'm like, you have to be more like me. That is the breeding ground for all kinds of mad hate, violence, and oppression to spread. It is not normal that you look at another being and feel filled with hate because they understand God differently to you. None of it's normal. Like, really, if you want to have a discussion, you're a real life weirdo. What do you mean you look at others and you're filled with hate for something that they can't control or something that brings them peace? Fucking little creep. I honestly believe we should bring back shame. I think if I was given power, jokes, but I do believe clowning people is the best way. You guys forget, when I first came out, Starbucks spirituality were fucking, I got a long list and I have all the receipts of their hate comments, their secret accounts. I'm like, you forget I'm a tech girlie. I know how to trace and track you, no problem. I used to work in big data. And it's just so funny to me that, like, at first they were like, da-na-na-na-na. And as soon as I started clowning them and making my points through humor, you embarrassed, you ashamed. That's what I'm saying. Bring back shame. Bring back clowning. It works. God damn it. And then again, obviously, we have romanticization of the past. So, like, you know, when we glorify traditional values, and all of a sudden, we're like, oh, back in the day, fuck back in the day, humans have never existed in a calmer time, right? There was always some weird shit. The whole point is to evolve, move away, create better. You do not get rewarded for sameness. Like, you know, the whole kind of thing that people are like, we need to return to our roots. Okay, but what happens if our roots, number one, were not that wide, very weak, and very prone to being poisoned and rotting, and we didn't actually cultivate good crops? What then, dumbass? Do we return to our roots? Or do we find new soil? Do we find a new way of farming to cultivate better crops? Questions must be asked. And then basically, there's bare sociological implications, is what I was getting at. When you have unhealthy communities, it's like a cesspit of hate, right? And when we do not allow for diversity to flourish, we do not allow for people to feel safe in expressing their identities, it is inevitably a ticking time bomb for extremism to explode on the world. And the thing is, no matter how sexy they make oppression, no matter how much they remix colonialism and all of that, no one thrives. Absolutely no one. And do not think just because there is a moment in time where you are thriving, you are safe, and you are unaffected, that will be the way forever. And that's the lesson that is coming. I have given you so many predictions over the years. They have never turned out wrong. Please pay attention to my points that I'm making to you about composure, community. I'll work out the third C after Christmas, but composure and community are key. And this leads me to my final point. So what is the solution? How do we know if we're building communities that are generally cool, great, we're on the right path, we're heading somewhere where like we won't have regret or anything about? And I have the answer. I have the keys to success. Oh, I'm short for time. I basically have my readings begin in 20 minutes. So I've got to make this quick. Basically, this is now going to be very anticlimactic because I can't do my seminar part. Multiculturalism's jackasses. Multiculturalism will save the day. Let me explain. So the reason I am so confident that multiculturalism is the answer is because of my existence. Think about it now, Hibiscus. You are currently watching a video by a woman who is a radically different ethnicity to you, radically different nationality, completely different religion, perhaps even different political views. Me and you do not come from the same walk of life. I have all kinds of weird life experiences, and there is nothing about me that truly is favored. I am the underdog of all underdogs. Don't let this outfit confuse you, right? However, in this moment in time, because you are open to hearing a different perspective, because I exist in a space that allows me to authentically express myself and make me feel safe enough to do so, I am able to share with you a sacred knowledge, a knowledge that you may have not known existed, right? I am able to give you something that ultimately and hopefully makes you feel better in your existence. And we learn from one another. You enrich my life, I enrich yours. And that could only happen because of multiculturalism. Even take it a layer deeper. Think about my effectiveness, right? You have come across many astrologers. Have they ever resonated with you properly? Like you could really understand yourself? Do they ever feel like it'll be someone you know you could sit and break bread with? I am more effective because I am not a cosplayer of our spiritual practices. And likewise, I am not venomous and my heart is not jaded, unfortunately, like other Vedic astrologers who are, unfortunately, again, affected by extremism and nationalism. Multiculturalism is the difference in your experience with me. I'm a product of multiculturalism. This is your reminder. I grew up in a really white town, right? Whilst I appreciate the parts of my personality you get, maybe are not the complete picture. You see the big Indian, Punjabi, vibrant Desi side of me. But as much as I am that, I'm also the following. I am 100% the babe you can find in a garage rave. I'm also the babe that you can find at afternoon tea if you want to discuss interior design, the latest homeware. I'm also the babe that you can talk to about 80s music. I'm the same babe you can talk about hair extensions, football, sports. My unique edge has always been my ability to understand other cultures, be open to them, but likewise be a reflection of all the cultures that have enriched my work. It's multiculturalism. When you have a community that has that, there's so much richness that comes through it, right? Think about all the things I expressed to you. I reflect back to you Black British culture, African American culture, Desi British Asian culture, like that. They're the beauty that you see in my existence and my work is multiculturalism and nothing less. It's the big M, not the genocidal one with the golden arches. You know what I'm saying? Like, you break bread with me because of multiculturalism. That's it. That is the answer. And listen, I appreciate we may feel like we haven't got it right in A, B, and C, but I don't think that's the case. I think they're trying to make you scared of multiculturalism because of how powerful it is. And in real time, it's working. This here is like a testament to it. Now think about everything else that's going on in the world. Don't you think the world would be better if we perfected multiculturalism? We, instead of demonizing it and saying it has failed, we actually acknowledge. Think about all the great foods we have. Think about the great art we have, the great music, the great fashion, like multiculturalism. I don't believe you can gatekeep God. So why should that be the case when it comes to solutions and innovations? 100 path, one source. And the one source is that more powerful because 100 paths lead to it. So it shows you multiple existences can get you there. If there's only one path, the source wouldn't really be that weak. That source wouldn't really be that strong. It'd be incredibly weak. Because what the fuck you mean I can only find you via one way? You can't be all big and bad, can you? But when 100 paths come your way, then I know it's inevitable. I'll always come back to you and I see you in everything and everything around me. So this is the point that I want to say with like multiculturalism, right? Number one, when you exist in a community that's multicultural, it fosters social cohesion, right? It helps build bridges between different groups and communities, and wonderful, wonderful things happen due to that, right? It reduces social tensions, it gets rid of misinformation, beauty, 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 strength, 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 protection. It obviously promotes innovation, creativity. I'm going to remind you, I'm a British Asian babe. I exist in a place where the number one consumed meal is chicken tikka masala. We literally made the colonizers' diet lit as fuck. And the truth is, you know what it is? When I look at my friendship circle, like, there's so many different people. It's not around with like other Indians or like small-minded people. I've got geezers in that friendship group. I've got religious Jewish babes. I've got hijabis. I've got the Caribbean babes. Who, like, does that make sense? Like, everything you like about me and I like about you is multicultural. It's not one source. And it has given me so much. And I can, like, I'm about it. And when we say we stand on business, maybe we should say that we uplift multiculturalism. Like, that's where it's at, hibiscuses. And that's also going to be the thing that protects us and saves us from a lot of shit and enables us to fight back, right? Obviously enriches cultural and social life. I'm in my delightful daughter-in-law era, you know. You see this headband? You see what I'm aiming for? But theoretically, if I used to be a club rat, I just want you to know my most funnest experiences are at drag clubs, which are a different culture. My most favorite experiences are drum and bass, garage, and jungle raves. Black culture. My most favorite experiences are long, long nights dancing to Bhangra. My culture. It brings a lot of goodness. Probably not a lot of wholesomeness. Well, it is kind of wholesome. I don't know if you've ever been complimented in a club toilet, theoretically, but some of my favorite compliments that come to mind. But yeah, it does enrich our cultural and social lives. Like, it just brings so much beauty once again to it. It strengthens economic growth. Hang tight, all the engineers that come from Asia, Africa. You man are doing. I could not have my favorite period app without any of you. You guys gave me TikTok. Blessed. It builds empathy and understanding. It enhances resilience, right? And most importantly, I think it generally upholds like freedom in society, fairness and justice in society. But other than that, I can see my alarm beeping at me. I've got to go for readings. The babes need me one-to-one. But yeah, community is the thing that's going to save us. And that's why I wanted to talk to you about ahead of the historical times that we find ourselves in. So it's cool if you don't currently belong to a community that you feel is right for you, but you can definitely go and build it and find it elsewhere. And on that journey, just understand different people are what are going to enrich you and allow you to flourish. Community, it is that like magic soil that will grow the most abundant of gardens. And the key thing, it's multicultural. It's not homogenous. It's not one of the same. There's so many different beautiful things. Like, obviously, you know, I'm a farming babe. The key to good crop is there has to be a lot of different stuff in the fertilizer. A homogenous fertilizer creates a really weak plant. I think there's something in that for you. But other than that, bye hibiscuses. I'm fucking time poor management. Okay, bye-bye. Love you, love you. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Cosmic Jar. Bye.